At 1:40 a.m., the security camera in the ICU hallway captured something that should not have been there. A tall shadow with no body attached to it stood perfectly still outside room 7, watching the only patient inside. Ryan Carter, 28, had been working the night shift at Riverside General Hospital for nearly 5 months. As a patient transporter and security support staff, his job was to move patients between floors, assist during emergencies, and do occasional rounds on the ICU floor when things got quiet. He liked the silence of the night shift, until the shadows started appearing. It began subtly. While reviewing CCTV footage during his break, Ryan noticed something strange on the ICU camera. A dark, human-shaped shadow would appear on the wall outside certain rooms for a few seconds, then vanish. There was no person casting it. The hallway lights were always on and no one was walking nearby. At first he thought it was a camera glitch or reflection from outside. But the shadow kept returning, always around 1:30 a.m. to 3 a.m., always on the same stretch of wall in the ICU corridor. One night, Ryan decided to check it himself. At 1:35 a.m. he walked the empty ICU hallway. Everything was quiet except for the low hum of machines. As he passed room 7 he saw it. The shadow was there on the wall, tall, thin and completely still. It had no source. No one was standing in front of any light. Ryan stood frozen, staring at it. The shadow slowly turned its head toward him as if it could see him. Ryan stepped back. The shadow stepped back at the exact same time, mimicking him perfectly. He ran to the nurse station and told the head nurse what he saw. She checked the live camera. The shadow was gone. She told him he was overworked and needed more sleep. But Ryan knew what he saw. Over the next week, the shadow became bolder. It started appearing in other places, sometimes on the ceiling, sometimes stretched across multiple walls at once. Ryan began noticing that whenever the shadow appeared outside a patient's room, that patient's condition would suddenly worsen within hours. One elderly woman in room 7 had been stable for days. The night the shadow stood outside her door for almost 10 minutes, she went into cardiac arrest at 4 a.m. Another night, the shadow appeared outside room 12. The young man inside, who was recovering well from pneumonia, suddenly developed severe breathing problems at 2:50 a.m. Ryan started keeping a private log. Every time the shadow appeared, something bad happened. On the 15th night, Ryan was transporting a patient from the 5th floor back to ICU when he saw the shadow again. This time not on the wall, but standing at the end of the hallway, fully formed like a black silhouette of a tall man. It had no face, just darkness. Ryan stopped the stretcher. The shadow raised one arm and pointed directly at the patient Ryan was moving, an old man who had just undergone heart surgery. Ryan quickly changed direction and took the patient to a different wing. He lied to the nurses, saying the doctor had changed the room. That night, the patient who was originally supposed to go to room 7 passed away suddenly. The shadow had been right. The final incident broke Ryan completely. It was a slow Tuesday night. At 1:25 a.m., Ryan was alone in the ICU corridor doing his rounds when all the lights dimmed for 3 seconds. When they came back on, the shadow was standing directly in front of him, only 6 feet away. This time it was different. It was taller and it had started developing features. Ryan could make out faint outlines of eyes and a mouth. The shadow slowly raised its hand and pointed at Ryan's chest. Then it spoke. Not through sound but directly inside his head, a cold, hollow voice. "You see me now, so you belong to me." Ryan dropped his flashlight and ran. He locked himself in the staff bathroom and stayed there until morning. He quit the hospital the next day. He didn't even give notice. He just sent a resignation email and blocked every number. 2 months later, Ryan was working at a warehouse during the day trying to forget everything. His sleep had improved. The nightmares had almost stopped. But one night, while he was home alone watching TV, the power went out for a few seconds. When the lights returned, Ryan saw it on his living room wall. The same tall shadow. It stood there, perfectly still, watching him. Then it slowly raised its hand and pointed at his chest again. Ryan heard the voice inside his head once more. "You can leave the hospital, Ryan. But you can't leave me." The shadow took one step forward on the wall. Ryan never turned the lights off again. At 3:12 a.m., the night nurse called Ryan over the radio. "Room 319 is asking for you by name again. He says he won't talk to anyone else." But room 319 had been vacant for weeks. Ryan Carter, 28, continued working the night shift at Riverside General Hospital even after the shadow incident. He had switched to a different floor, hoping to escape whatever was following him. His new role was on the 3rd floor, post-surgery and recovery ward. It was supposed to be quieter. It wasn't. The first time it happened was on a slow Thursday night. Ryan was walking the corridor when he received the call about room 319. He knew the room was empty because he had helped clean and lock it earlier that evening. Still, he went to check. He opened the door. A middle-aged man was sitting up in bed, wearing a hospital gown. He looked completely normal, tired but calm. He smiled when he saw Ryan. "There you are," the man said. "I've been waiting for you." Ryan stood in the doorway, confused. "Sir, this room is closed. How did you get in here?" The man ignored the question. "You're Ryan Carter, right? The one who works nights. You lost your uncle last year in this hospital. Room 214. I remember." Ryan felt ice crawl up his spine. Very few people knew about his uncle's death. "Who are you?" Ryan asked, his voice low. The man smiled wider. "Just a patient. Come sit with me for a while." Ryan stepped back and radioed the nurse station. "There's a patient in 319. He shouldn't be here." When the head nurse arrived 2 minutes later with security, the room was completely empty. The bed was perfectly made. No sign that anyone had been there. The nurse looked at Ryan strangely. "Are you okay? You look pale." That was the first night. After that, the man in room 319 started appearing regularly. Every few nights, Ryan would get a call or a message that the patient in 319 was asking for him specifically. Sometimes the call light would turn on by itself. Sometimes the man would be seen walking in the corridor asking nurses where Ryan was. Each time Ryan reached the room, the man would be there, sitting up, smiling, knowing personal details about Ryan's life that no stranger should know. He knew about Ryan's breakup last year. He knew Ryan was afraid of being alone. He even knew the exact words Ryan had spoken at his uncle's funeral. One night, Ryan finally confronted him. He entered room 319 at 3:20 a.m. The man was waiting as usual. "Why do you keep calling me?" Ryan asked, keeping distance from the bed. The man looked at him with calm, almost kind eyes. "Because you can see me, Ryan. Most people can't anymore. I died in this room 4 months ago. Heart failure. They moved me out quickly and reassigned the room. But I never really left." Ryan's mouth went dry. He remembered now, there had been a patient who died in 319 around that time. The man continued, "I get lonely at night. The other patients can't see me. The nurses ignore me. But you always come when I call." Ryan backed toward the door. "What do you want from me?" The man's expression didn't change, but his voice became colder. "Just stay with me until morning. Talk to me. I miss having someone listen." As he spoke, the room temperature dropped sharply. The man's face began to look slightly different, more sunken, more gray. His eyes stayed locked on Ryan. Ryan ran out and slammed the door. The situation became unbearable. The man started appearing in other rooms where Ryan was working. He would stand silently in the corner while Ryan helped actual patients. Sometimes he would whisper things only Ryan could hear. "You're going to die here too, Ryan? Just like me. Alone on night shift." On his last night, Ryan was giving medicine to a real patient in room 305 when the lights flickered. When they stabilized, the man from 319 was standing right next to the patient's bed, staring down at the sleeping man. He looked at Ryan and said softly, "His heart is weak. He'll be joining me soon." Ryan shouted and ran to the nurse station. He told them everything. The nurses checked room 319. Empty. They reviewed the security footage. On the footage, Ryan could be seen talking to himself inside the empty room multiple times. There was no man visible on camera. That was the final straw. Ryan resigned the next morning. He left the hospital and swore he would never work nights again. 3 weeks later, Ryan had taken a daytime security job at a shopping mall. The pay was lower, but at least it was during daylight. One quiet afternoon while sitting in the security office, his phone rang. It was the hospital's number. He didn't pick up. A voicemail came through. A calm, familiar voice spoke. "Ryan, it's me. Room 319 is ready again. I'm still waiting for you." Ryan deleted the message with shaking hands. That night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., even though he was asleep in his apartment, his phone lit up with a new message. It was from the hospital's internal system. Room 319, patient requesting Ryan Carter. At 3:05 a.m., the operating room lights on the second floor turned on by themselves. Marcus Hale, 29, was on duty when he saw it on the security monitor. No surgery was scheduled. No staff had logged in. But someone was moving inside or 3. Marcus Hale had been working the night shift at Riverside General Hospital for 6 months. As a surgical technician, his job was to prepare operating rooms, sterilize instruments, and assist emergency surgeries. He preferred nights because they were usually quiet and paid better. But lately the second floor had become anything but quiet. It started with small things. Instruments would be moved overnight. Surgical trays that he had prepared would be found rearranged in the morning. The head nurse told him it was probably the cleaning crew, but Marcus knew the cleaning crew wasn't allowed inside the ORs after midnight. Then came the real incidents. One night at 3:10 a.m., Marcus received an emergency page 2 or 3. When he arrived, the room was brightly lit. The surgical lights were focused on the empty operating table. All the instruments were neatly laid out as if a surgery was about to begin. But there was no patient, no surgeon, no team. Marcus spoke into the empty room. "Hello? Is anyone here?" A calm, authoritative male voice answered from behind him. "We're running late. Scrub in." Marcus spun around. No one was there. He quickly shut down the lights and left the OR. The next day he checked the logs. No one had booked OR 3 that night. The voice returned on multiple nights. Sometimes it would give instructions during empty surgeries. Clamp the artery. More suction. Patient is crashing. Marcus started recording his shifts. On the audio he could clearly hear his own footsteps and breathing, and another person's voice giving medical commands in the background. One night, while Marcus was alone sterilizing tools, the voice spoke again, this time much closer, right next to his ear. "You're doing it wrong, Marcus. Let me show you." He felt cold fingers brush against his hand. When he looked down, the scalpel he was holding had been placed in a different position. That was when he decided to research. He discovered that a renowned surgeon, Dr. Elias Grant, had died in this hospital 2 years ago. He had suffered a massive heart attack while performing emergency surgery in OR 3. He was known for being extremely strict and dedicated. Some even called him obsessive. He used to work long into the night, often refusing to leave until the job was perfect. After his death, strange stories had circulated among the old staff, but most of them had left or stayed silent. On the night that changed everything, Marcus was forced to confront it. At 2:50 a.m., a real emergency came in. A young woman with severe internal bleeding after a car accident. Marcus had to prepare OR 3. As soon as the real surgical team started working, things went wrong in unnatural ways. The monitors started showing readings that didn't match the patient's actual condition. Instruments kept falling. The lead surgeon became increasingly frustrated. Then Marcus saw him. In the reflection of the glass cabinet, a tall man in full surgical gown and mask stood behind the real surgeon, watching the procedure with cold eyes. When Marcus turned, no one was there. But the voice returned, loud and clear, only for Marcus to hear. "They're going to lose her. Move aside. I'll fix this." The real surgeon suddenly stepped back as if pushed. The instruments started moving on their own, floating slightly above the tray before settling into position. Marcus panicked. He shouted, "Stop. Everyone get out." Chaos erupted. The surgical team thought he had lost his mind. The patient was rushed to another OR and she barely survived. Marcus was suspended immediately. Before leaving the hospital for the last time, Marcus went back to OR 3 one final time at 3:30 a.m. The room was dark. He stood in the center and spoke loudly. "Dr. Grant, you're dead. You need to stop. You're hurting people now." For a few seconds there was silence. Then every light in the OR turned on at full brightness. Dr. Elias Grant stood directly in front of him, fully visible, still wearing his blood-stained surgical gown. His eyes were tired but furious. "I never lost a patient in 28 years, the surgeon said in a low, icy voice. "Not until the night my heart gave out. I refuse to leave until I'm sure every patient is safe." He stepped closer. "And you see me clearly. That means you can help me finish my work." Marcus backed away until he hit the wall. The surgeon raised a scalpel that appeared in his hand. "Stay. We have many surgeries left tonight." Marcus screamed and ran out of the OR. He quit the hospital that same night and never returned. 2 months later, Marcus had moved to another city and taken a job at a medical supply company. No more hospitals, no more night shifts. But on some quiet nights, when he was alone in his apartment, he would wake up to the sound of surgical monitors beeping. And a calm voice would whisper from the darkness, "Marcus, we're running late for the next case." At 4:22 a.m., the time clock in the staff room beeped. Someone had just swiped their ID card. But the only person on duty that night was Ethan. Ethan Reeves, 30, worked as a night shift security and logistics coordinator at Mercy Hills Hospital. After 2 rough years, he needed a stable job with good overtime. His responsibilities included monitoring cameras, escorting staff, moving supplies, and doing occasional checks on the lower levels. He had been warned by the outgoing guy that the night shift could get weird, but Ethan didn't believe in ghost stories. Until Kevin started showing up again. The first time it happened was on a quiet Wednesday night. Ethan was reviewing camera footage when he saw someone walking the basement corridor at 2:50 a.m., wearing the same dark blue security jacket as him. The man looked exactly like Kevin Brooks, a former colleague who had died in a car accident 3 months earlier while driving home after his shift. Ethan froze. He zoomed in on the footage. It was unmistakably Kevin. Same build, same slight limp in his right leg, same faded cap he always wore. He checked the live feed. The basement corridor was empty. The next night at 3:10 a.m., Ethan received a radio call. "Ethan, this is Kevin. Need backup on level B, code yellow." Ethan's blood ran cold. Kevin's voice was clear on the radio. He slowly responded, "Kevin, is that you?" There was a short pause. "Who else would it be? Get down here." Ethan didn't go. He stayed at the main security desk with all the lights on. But the calls kept coming. Every night. Sometimes Kevin would report false emergencies. Sometimes he would just check in like old times. "Everything quiet on the West Wing tonight? Make sure you lock the pharmacy door." Kevin even started appearing on the security cameras, walking through hallways, doing rounds, checking doors exactly the way he used to when he was alive. On the 10th night, Ethan finally confronted it. At 3:45 a.m., he saw Kevin on the live camera standing near the morgue entrance. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and went down. The basement was freezing. When he reached the morgue corridor, Kevin was standing there under the flickering light, looking completely normal except for his extremely pale skin. "Kevin," Ethan said carefully, "you're dead, man?" Kevin smiled sadly. "Yeah, I know. But I can't seem to stop working. Every night I wake up and feel like I still have a shift to finish." He took a step closer. "I was driving home exhausted that night. Fell asleep at the wheel. Woke up here, but I never really clocked out." Ethan's hands were shaking. "What do you want from me?" Kevin looked at him with tired, hollow eyes. "I want you to help me finish my rounds. Just for tonight. There are things in this hospital that still need checking. Patients that are scared. Doors that shouldn't be open." For a moment Ethan felt pity. Kevin had always been a dedicated guy. But then Kevin's expression changed. His head tilted slightly. "And after tonight, you'll take over for me. Someone has to work the night shift forever." The lights in the entire basement went out. When they came back on, Kevin was standing right in front of Ethan, inches away. His eyes were now completely white. "You and me, partner. We'll keep this hospital safe. Together." Ethan ran. He sprinted up the stairs, hearing Kevin's footsteps calmly following him the entire way. When he reached the ground floor, the footsteps stopped. The next morning, Ethan put in his resignation. He moved to a different city and took a daytime delivery job. No hospitals. No night shifts. For 3 weeks, everything was peaceful. Then, on a rainy Thursday while Ethan was home alone, his phone rang at 4:22 a.m. A known number. He answered with a trembling voice. A familiar voice spoke on the other end. "Hey Ethan, it's Kevin. The hospital called. They need us on level B again." Ethan looked at his phone screen. The call was coming from inside the hospital's internal extension. Before he could hang up, there was a soft beep in his apartment, the sound of an ID card being swiped. His own ID card, which was still in his wallet. Kevin's voice came again, calm and patient. "I'll wait for you at the door. Don't be late for our shift." At 1:55 a.m., the blood bank alarm went off. When Lucas arrived, the refrigerated unit was wide open and 3 units of O-negative blood were missing. But the security log showed no one had entered the blood bank since 11 p.m. Lucas Grant, 27, worked the night shift as a lab technician and blood bank support at Cedar Valley Medical Center. The job paid well, and after a bad car accident last year that left him with heavy medical debt, he needed the overtime. He didn't mind the quiet nights. Until the blood started disappearing. It began 2 weeks ago. Small amounts at first. 1 or 2 units gone from the inventory with no record. The system showed no access. Then it got worse. Entire batches would vanish, only to reappear hours later in strange places, left on counters placed neatly outside patient rooms or stacked inside the elevator. The hospital administration blamed it on faulty sensors. Lucas knew better. One night at 2:10 a.m., Lucas was alone in the blood bank doing inventory when he heard the soft sound of liquid dripping. Drip, drip, drip. He looked down. A thin trail of fresh blood was running across the white tile floor toward him. He followed it with his flashlight. The trail led to the walk-in refrigerator. Inside, one of the blood bags was hanging from the ceiling hook, slowly leaking. But no one had touched it. As Lucas stepped closer, the bag suddenly burst, spraying cold blood across his face and chest. He stumbled back, gasping. When he wiped his eyes and looked again, all the bags were back in their correct places, perfectly sealed. But the blood on his uniform was real. It was still warm. After that night, the blood began to follow him. Wherever Lucas went on his shift, he would find drops of blood. On the floor of the elevator. On the handle of the medicine cart. Inside his own locker. Always O-negative, the rarest and most valuable type. One night, while helping a nurse draw blood from a patient, the patient suddenly looked at him and whispered, "It wants to go back inside you." Lucas froze. The patient later had no memory of saying it. On the 14th night, Lucas decided to stay in the blood bank and wait. At exactly 1:55 a.m., the alarm sounded again. The heavy refrigerator door opened slowly by itself. Lucas hid behind a cabinet and watched. A figure stepped out from inside the refrigerator. It was a man, tall, thin, wearing hospital scrubs. His skin was deathly white, and his veins stood out dark blue across his face and arms. He moved like he was in pain, clutching his stomach. The man walked to the blood storage and began taking units out, one by one, pressing them against his own body as if trying to absorb them. Lucas's flashlight slipped from his hand. The man turned. It was him. The figure had Lucas's face, exact same features, same scar above the left eyebrow from his car accident. The doppelganger smiled weakly and spoke in Lucas's own voice. "They took too much from us that night, after the crash. I need it back." Lucas felt his legs go weak. "What are you?" "I'm what's left when they drain you dry," the double whispered. "The part they threw away. The part that never got enough blood to survive." He stepped closer, blood dripping from his fingers. "Give it back to me, Lucas. Just a little every night. Otherwise I'll have to take it from the patients, or from you." Lucas ran out of the blood bank and locked the door behind him. He spent the rest of the shift sitting in the brightly lit main lobby, refusing to move. He tried to quit the next day, but the hospital offered him a big bonus to stay another month. He was desperate for money, so he agreed, but only on the condition that he would never work the blood bank again. It didn't matter. 2 nights later, while Lucas was on the 6th floor delivering lab reports, he felt something wet on his hand. He looked down. His palm was bleeding. Fresh blood was slowly oozing from his skin without any cut. Then he heard his own voice coming from the empty patient room beside him. "Just a little every night, Lucas. That's all I need." He looked through the glass window. His doppelganger was sitting on the empty bed, smiling at him, pressing one of the stolen blood bags against his chest. Lucas left the hospital that same night and never went back. He deleted his number, changed cities, and took a job at a diagnostic lab that only operated during daytime. But every night at exactly 1:55 a.m., he wakes up with the taste of iron in his mouth. And when he checks his pillow, there is always a small, fresh blood stain. He knows it's only a matter of time before the other Lucas comes looking for more.